everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Michelle Graff, and I'm the editor-in-chief at National Jeweler. I'm pleased to welcome you to the latest episode of My Next Question, National Jeweler's webinar series, brought to you this month by The Edge. Today's session features senior editor Ashley Davis in conversation with jewelry historian Jennifer Sieverling. Before I turn the discussion over to Ashley and Jennifer, I just wanted to let our attendees know that if they have a question, they can drop it into the Zoom Q&A box at the bottom of their screens. I'll be back on after the discussion to share any questions with our panelists. Also, today's session is being recorded and will be available on the National Jeweler website this coming Friday, April 15th. Now I'll let Ashley get things started. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, and welcome, Jennifer. I'm so excited to have you here today. I discovered the Tea Gemstones podcast this year, and I believe it launched last year. It's fairly new, and I just found it such a great listen with so much great information on historical jewelry to contemporary jewelry trends, as well as really fun celebrity moments of, what's happening jewelry-wise on big red carpets. So I'm so excited to have you here today. And I was wondering if you can just tell us about Tea Gemstones, how it got started, and what's your background in relationship to jewelry.
Oh, sure. Well, thanks for having me, Ashley, and thanks for having me, National Jewelers. This is super exciting for me. Tea Gemstones podcast developed from me being a stay-at-home mom and honestly sitting back and trying to create my dream job. I have a degree in history and education from the University of North Texas, and reading and writing has always been a huge part of my life. And I talk about in the intro of every podcast episode that I am a lifelong sparkle enthusiast. So I sat down one day and I was like, how do I combine my loves of jewelry, history, reading, and writing into something that I can do at home with my baby? So that's how Tea Gemstones was born. Some recording equipment off Amazon, watching a lot of FAQ editing videos on YouTube to learn the software, and late nights, because as a mom, that's the only time I had to do anything by myself.
Amazing. And so why jewelry? Just out of a personal passion?
It is a personal passion. Ever since I was little, I remember I used to tear pages out of the Tiffany catalog and tape them to the fridge. I was 8 years old and I wanted my parents to buy me something out of the Tiffany high jewelry blue book. I thought that was completely reasonable.
You and I have connected a lot on vintage jewelry, and we've chatted about kind of the things that are really resonating with consumers today.
Mm-hmm.
So taking a sort of wide view of trends to start, it feels like the secondhand market in jewelry is very hot right now, and particularly since the pandemic started. So what can you tell us just about vintage jewelry as a trend and what that says about how people are shopping today?
Yeah, so this trend is really connected to the pandemic, which has been going on now for about 3 years. So when the pandemic hit and everyone just went into their homes and proceeded to stay home, all the extras of life went away. No more travel, no more visiting friends and family, no more going out shopping, no more happy hours after work for a lot of people, no more work, period. Willingly or unwillingly, with the Great Resignation, all the extras and distractions of life were involuntarily taken away, and people were really left with just themselves. And it was a bit of self-reckoning for, I think, most people. I certainly experienced it. My husband did, of like, wow, okay, who am I when I'm not going 90 to nothing, go, go, go all day, bouncing from one thing to the next? And that sense of pausing from the chaos of life and engaging in, you're stuck at home, you're engaging in this deep self-contemplation, which is a very romantic notion. I think of a book I love, The Old Man and the Sea, this concept of, are we defined by our work, our deeds, if we're defined by our work and our deeds, what happens when the work stops? Santiago in The Old Man and the Sea, he goes 84 days without catching a fish. So is he still a fisherman? As we all sat in our living rooms, not doing all the activities of life, are we still the same people when we aren't doing all those things? Who are we? So these last couple years of people engaging in self-reflection, we're looking at ourselves as people of what do we care about the most? Who we feel we are deeply in our personalities when everything extra, all the distractions are gone. Once people started discovering these precious inner qualities of themselves, they want to commemorate that discovery with jewelry. And we use jewelry to celebrate all sorts of milestones, accomplishments, to mark memories, everything from the longtime company man being celebrated with a gold Rolex to push presents, school graduations, anniversaries, birthdays. And once people started making these precious discoveries of their vulnerable, true selves, I'm sorry, but buying a commercial fast fashion piece of jewelry just isn't worthy of marking that self-discovery occasion. And that, I think, is a big factor why people are turning to antique and vintage jewelry. It feels appropriate for this time.
And there's just to go off of that value shift. I think you're saying with feeling good about also just the sustainable aspect of the jewelry, or sustainable is a tricky word to use, but just the recycling aspect of the jewelry, that it's not throwaway like the fast fashion.
Yeah, it's imbued with, you can look at something and it has meaning to you, but it's coming from somewhere where it also had meaning. Even though you don't understand it fully, it still feels more personal and more valuable than if you just picked it up at the mall.
Yeah. So there is also the emotional, more than even just the values of shopping more responsibly. There is that also that emotional connection.
Definitely.
Very interesting. I love how your podcast gives context to items that are really popular today. I loved a recent episode on signet rings, especially. Yes. So I was wondering, what can you tell us about the history of signet rings, and then particularly in their relation to the Catholic Church? Because I definitely learned something new from that episode.
Yeah, the signet ring episode kind of came about really naturally because I just saw them appearing on my Instagram feed over and over again. And to be honest, when I got curious, I didn't know that much about them and I wanted to find out more. So I started researching and I just found out so many fascinating things I had to write about them. So they're all over the modern everything right now. Like they're a hot ticket item, signet rings, but they're actually a really ancient accessory. Archaeologists have discovered 3,000-year-old signets from the time of the Egyptian pharaohs. They're mentioned in the Bible. And actually, so if you go historically way back, they're a symbol of authority, jewelry with a job, I like to say, because back in the days before technology, everything was written by hand. So how do you apply a mark of authentication to a document? Well, signet rings are reverse engineered so that when the ring is stamped into a document with ink or wax, the design displays out perfectly. And they're carved so intricately that they're considered authentic because they're hard to forge. And kings, merchants, rich people all use their signets to basically sign their names to documents like decrees, bill of sales, last will, and testaments with this mark of firm authority. The most powerful, you mentioned the Catholic Church, the most powerful and lavish signet rings are actually called the rings of the fisherman, which is the custom signet ring created for whomever was the current sitting pope. It's a play off of St. Peter, who was a fisherman. He was the first pope. And the papal signet ring, there's an official one for all his, very fancy pope things that he does. But the ring of the fisherman is his personal authority and identity to the pope as a person. And they create a bespoke creation for each new pope for like his new identity. Like, now you're a pope. Here's your signet ring. It's super special. He sealed all his personal correspondence with it. It's a very powerful piece of jewelry for this, to represent this person who heads an organization that over 1 billion people belong to. Nowadays, signet rings, which are this traditionally masculine item, it's being claimed by women and modern men alike to be used to express their personalities and connections to what they care about. The crest on the signet ring, traditionally, it can have an initial, but also designs of nature, a crest, lots of animals that the wearer connects to. There are more traditionally beloved animals like lions or eagles, but I've seen more unusual animals like roosters or a greyhound dog. Vintage signets are a hot item right now, being sold online. Just about every secondhand jewelry place is sourcing signets, looking for signets because people want them. But lots of modern jewelry brands are crafting their own designs. I mentioned it in the podcast episode. David Yurman has over 80 signet designs with everything from horses, bumblebees. So you can find the perfect way to express yourself with a signet ring on either the secondhand market or brand new.
I love that. So interesting. So does the Pope even today will still sign something with it, like with his signet ring?
Well, if you're lucky enough to get a personal letter from the Pope, like he's your friend and he writes you a letter, yeah, it could be at the bottom of the letter.
Oh my gosh, because it does make sense that that might be the one institution that would still, because it's so ceremonial, there's, so many ceremonies in Catholicism, that they would still even do that today.
Yes, it is still a practice very much in vogue today. And now with modern technology, we have high resolution photographs of the Pope with his ring so everyone can zoom in. And the jewelers themselves, Pope Francis got his ring from a jeweler in Barcelona, Spain, and the jeweler actually did an interview all about it. So I dive into that a lot more details on my signet ring episode on my podcast, which is there for anyone else who is curious about the history of signet rings.
So cool. So another trend is charms. Charms have been really huge in jewelry lately. And can you give us some context about when charms kind of first had their moment, now that they're having like this big revival on the secondhand market and also with contemporary jewelers?
Yeah, charms is a really enduring, constant current. If the river of jewelry trends, if parts of it are fast or slow, the river changes and moves. But underneath the water is this really steady, strong current of charms. Charms have never gone away. Their popularity does sort of ebb and flow, and it kind of goes with demographics. It's like young girls are very into charms, and then it kind of swings back when you hit maybe middle age, older. Charms kind of fall back in. There's not a lot in the middle, where 20, 30, early 40-year-olds are kind of like, yay, charms, until kind of now. Because concerning charms, I think the most appealing part of charms for people starting to collect jewelry is charms have an accessible price point, because charms are, well, they're small and the size usually means you can start collecting charms for a relatively low amount of money, compared to like starting to collect gemstones or big heavy necklaces that take a lot of precious metal material, which costs money.
And the fact that you can buy them individually, even without the chain.
Yeah. And I would dare to venture that part of the appeal of collecting charms, a lot of the appeal is the hunt. One of those kind of, it's the journey, not the destination kind of vibes. Not that it isn't fun to sit around with your friends and compare bracelets or collections, or in this socially distanced world, more likely to post a picture of your latest find on social media. But like combing through eBay pages, hashtags, Etsy, the quest, the hunt, it's what you do late at night when you're halfway watching something on TV. You're looking for those charms because there are so many. They're endless in terms of creativity and uniqueness. I never fail to be amazed by what people will render in precious metals and gemstones in such miniature form.
Yeah.
Yeah, just in the last week, I follow a couple of charm accounts. I've seen a sterling silver bale of cotton, teeny tiny scissors with a ruby set in the handle, a porcelain eyeball, and a 14 karat gold lampshade. Yes.
I love the lampshade. And when they're vintage, it's almost even better to think that somebody was making that in the past, not just like as a fun novelty to be silly today, but that in the past, someone was really making that and wearing it.
Yeah, you think that there was enough demand for vintage lampshade charms, and they thought, no, let's not make it in 10 karat. This is quality. It must be a 14 karat lampshade. And so, like, while a singular piece of jewelry like a ring can be limited to only representing one aspect of your personality, a charm bracelet has the ability to hold dozens of tiny, beautiful objects. You can really carry like a well-rounded representation of yourself on your wrist.
Yeah, and especially by adding and subtracting in your life, like as you see fit, as you connect with certain things more and less.
Oh, definitely. Jewelry brands, it is a bread and butter money horse charms. Because if you can get some, that's why so many jewelry companies do, buy one charm, get the bracelet for free. Because once they hook you with the bracelet, you're going to keep coming back to buy more charms.
Mm. And I do think that is the hunt, I think, as far as what I see on social media, is also just a big part of the vintage and antique jewelry craze, just because it's almost more of a hobby than just shopping, but to hunt like that. So I do think that is one way to, even if a store is to have like a small vintage selection, I do think that's one way to kind of integrate yourself into people's lives and have them keep coming back.
Definitely. I think people are really questing that dopamine adrenaline rush of seeking, finding, purchasing. And people quest to do that over and over again. And that can have some backlash when you approach it to things like fast fashion, mass produced, limited quantities, people wait, people buy, and then they want more. So now you have to turn around and use more resources. But yes, like you said, if jewelry stores secondhands can channel that quest, find, buy, quest, find, buy pattern with products that already exist, charms that have already been made, then you're not using more resources. It does have an aspect of sustainability, and you're getting people more engaged in the vintage market. Definitely.
Yeah, great point. Now to kind of switch gears a little bit, you also on the podcast delve into a lot of pop culture moments, which is very fun, including celebrity engagement rings.
Those are my favorite. They're so over the top. I love it.
Perfect. Well, they're not, yes, over the top, but not all that interesting. I think that's what's hard for me. But one very interesting one was Megan Fox's engagement ring made by Stephen Webster, the two stone, emerald and diamond. I think they're both pear-shaped stones. So her engagement ring that she debuted this January. So I was wondering what you can tell us about the relevance of two stone styles.
Regarding engagement rings, I think an engagement ring is the most personal piece of jewelry ever. And engagement rings in the last few years have definitely risen with the tide of the same surging self-reflection effect as all other types of jewelry, that people are just looking for it to mean more. And I humbly submit that there is no more piece of jewelry more infused with meaning than an engagement ring. An engagement ring displays a couple's dedication and love to each other. But come on, besides that wonderful stuff, the engagement ring design is an incredibly intimate choice. It can now reflect the personality of the couple for the world to see. And that's what happened with Megan Fox and Machine Gun Kelly. And because they were so open about how it reflected their personality, it almost gave a very high visibility peek into this very personal ring selection. I have it written down here in my notes. Machine Gun Kelly, his name is Colson Baker, but it's just more fun to call him MGK. He posted on Instagram his own statement about the ring, and he said, quote, "I know tradition is one ring, but I designed it with Stephen Webster to be two. The emerald, her birthstone, and the diamond, my birthstone, set on two magnetic bands of thorns that draw together as two halves of the same soul, forming the obscure heart that is our love." That's so thoughtful and interesting and cool. And besides being a very modern approach, you think that this is a very personal way to mark a transition of moving towards marriage. It's actually very old school because the ring style is called a toy et moi ring, which is a phrase I have a lot of trouble saying correctly consistently. Toy et moi means you and me. And fashion follows trends of the rich and famous, right? And a couple hundred years ago, before we had tabloids and internet gossip sites, the rich and the famous were the royalty. And the toy et moi style was first made popular in 1796 by Napoleon Bonaparte. When he was emperor, he gave his wife Josephine a ring featuring two pear-cut gems, the same as Machine Gun Kelly. But the one selected for Josephine, one was a white diamond and one was a blue sapphire. And though their marriage ended in divorce after 14 years, the two of them were considered to be each other's great love. It's actually reported that Josephine's name was the last word that Napoleon said when he died. So you can see the appeal of working with two stones, right? You almost don't have to pick and choose. Like Megan Fox, you can have green and white. And while Megan's stones, like Josephine's, yes, you're right, Ashley, they were both pear cuts. You can also take the toy et moi style and apply it to different cuts. Emily Ratajkowski, the famous model, she has a ring that has, yes, a pear cut diamond, but also a princess cut stone, which is a square. So talk about a statement piece. The ring was designed with their friend and jeweler, Ashley Klimla, and each brilliant white stone in Emily's ring is over 2 carats each. And if mixing two cuts isn't unique enough, what about mixing two totally different stones? Ariana Grande, a singer who needs no introduction, she said yes to a toy et moi ring from her husband that features a large white oval set at a playful angle next to a perfectly white pearl.
Yes, very cool.
Super different. And you think, okay, so this is a very old style Napoleon long ago, celebrities, modern day, but the most epic toy et moi ring I've ever seen is kind of right in the middle of all of that, touching on royal engagement rings. Queen Marguerite II of Denmark, she has a toy et moi ring. It's not just a young celebrity's game. Marguerite got her ring in October 1966, and it is a matched pair of square cut diamonds, and they're set at an angle. And each one is over 6 carats each.
Oh my gosh.
12 carats of diamond. It's the most epic of all toy et moi rings I have ever seen. So this style of ring, it offers amazing possibilities for customization, which, yeah, people are liking right now. And it allows you to stand out from a crowd. I have the philosophy that you should be able to drop your engagement ring in a bowl with 50 others and easily be able to pick yours out.
I love that. That's so good. Well, I think that Megan Fox, then she's got it. She definitely passes that test.
Definitely. I mean, hers is 2 rings. So it's so cool with the magnets embedded in the white gold. I'm just really, and with her green stone, green is a trend. JLo just got engaged with her green diamond. We're just going to see more green. It's happening. I'm calling it right now. More green.
Okay. I like that prediction. Emerald is a little tough only because jewelers don't really want to use it because it's so soft.
Keep your eye on Soverite garnets. They are the most beautiful, rich green to rival emeralds, way more accessible than green diamonds, but a super hard on the Mohs scale. One of my dearest friends just got engaged with the Savarite garnet, and it's a stunning, it's one of the best ways to get green into your rings. And not that many people know about that stone. And I just predict that that is going to help boost. Once Savarite garnets hit the mainstream, it's going to be green for everybody.
And that's such a good point, because I guess we could say, alternative engagement ring market, even though it's becoming more and more normal to do something a little different than a diamond solitaire, for example, but that market has been kind of dominated by sapphires and maybe morganite. So kind of more like blue and pink hues if someone is opting for a center stone other than a diamond. But this could be, like you're saying, the introduction of a different shade as people see a green diamond, someone wearing an emerald, and kind of becoming more comfortable with the idea of a different color. So I like your Savarite garnet prediction.
Yeah, green has always sort of had kind of the stepchild situation to high fashion. Anna Wintour gave an interview where she said once green doesn't sell, that she never puts a green cover on Vogue because it doesn't sell. So I think green has kind of been the color of like the everyday person, sort of, and ruby and blue sapphires, have had their moment in the sun. But I think green is knocking on the door, and it's like, excuse me, I would like to play. I'm here.
I do want us to touch on J.Lo. Because since now it's obviously very pertinent current news, we should touch on that. But first, you mentioned a royal engagement ring. Are there any others that you think are particularly interesting in terms of their history or just their design?
Royals love color. The Queen of the Netherlands, Queen Maxima, has an orange diamond.
Oh my gosh.
It's beautiful. Well, orange and white are the colors. Orange is the national color. So she rocks it right away. That's actually a very European trend, to have a ring that sort of represents the flag. I don't want to say it wrong, but one of the royals, or the famous political such and such, is from France, that moved to another country. Her husband gave her an engagement ring that was a trilogy of ovals in the French flag colors. So it's a white diamond, a blue sapphire, and a red ruby. There is another royal who has it's 3 princess cut stones, 2 red and a white in the middle, to also channel the flag. I actually have an episode of the podcast called Royal Engagement Rings, where I have all those stories and details with all the names and dates that I can't remember right now off the top of my head.
That's so interesting. I love that. Just a personal favorite, because I'm not an expert on royal jewelry, but I have learned from covering some for National Jeweler. I'm familiar with some of the royals who have gotten engaged in the last few years. So Princess Eugenie.
Princess Eugenie.
Is it Eugenie? Okay.
That's how I say it in my head.
Okay. In the UK, she had that amazing pod parasha sapphire, and it was a cluster style, so kind of similar to the same style of like the Princess Diana, Kate Middleton having like a big in that case blue sapphire, like surrounded by the large.
That actually harkens back to her mother's design. So Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, has a ruby that's surrounded by 11, it's either 11 or 14 white diamonds. It's actually said that Prince Andrew chose a ruby for her because it matched the red of her hair. So Prince Andrew doesn't make a lot of good choices, but he picked a good ring. And so her daughter got one in the same style that's actually in that pad parasha sapphire color. People don't always know that sapphires come literally in every single color of the rainbow, and sometimes 2 or 3 colors at once, tricolor sapphires. But the sapphire that Princess Eugenie chose is actually called like a salmon pink. It's a very rare, highly desired color, and it's truly a very beautiful ring. Yes, and it is in that floral halo style that the royals love so much.
Yes, which I don't know the term to call it, because I hate to call it a halo because they're the big diamonds around it. So it's like so much more impact than a halo. But yeah, so like
It's a big halo.
halo, but something along those lines. It's very cool. But her stone is actually my favorite royal engagement ring that I've seen through my little research thus far. Okay, so before we go, let's just touch on JLo. Can you just give me your thoughts on the green diamond, just off the cuff, your opinions? This is the 6th engagement ring that we know of. I mean, I feel like she's probably been proposed to more than that, maybe just a no, but the 6th one that we know of, she's had the pink, the blue, and now the green, which is just so unique. So what do you think about it?
Well, yes, she's had 6 engagement rings from 5 different men. She's giving Elizabeth Taylor quite the run for her money. But, Ben Affleck, when he proposed in, I believe it was 2003, 2002. Yeah, they called off the wedding in 2004. When he proposed with that 6.1 carat pink Harry Winston, it changed the diamond industry forever. People, you can look at the Christie's auction numbers for the huge spike in demand of colored diamonds, especially the softer feminine colors of like pink and purple and some yellows. So while I think, she's kind of has to compete, if you have 6 engagement rings, each one has to be bigger and better than the last.
She has to compete with herself. Yeah.
Right. So I believe her one from A-Rod just a year or two ago was like 12 karat emerald cut. So, how do you trump that when you've already had a blue diamond and a pink diamond? I guess you start going for green. I wrote about it in a blog on my Patreon where it's like, you can't go much bigger. Beyonce has a 24 karat engagement ring. Celebrities are going to have to start looking to color in order to get some more of the rarity. Blake Lively has a pink oval diamond. I think that we're going to start seeing a trend that the rich, the famous, the celebrities are going to start looking to color to get their uniqueness, their rarity. They're kind of like their rarefied air to breathe about their ring. They're just going to have to start looking to color because size has already been done. You just can't go much bigger than they already are. So JLo's going to start a trend. I think we're going to start seeing yellow. We've already seen some yellow. Carrie Underwood has yellow, but I think the rarer colors, orange, purple, green, they're going to start coming out.
And Kate Hudson had a champagne one last year that I wrote about, which might not have as much clout as the pink and
I love those. Kristen Bell has a 3 carat. I'm sorry, what was it?
No, her ring was so stunning. The shade of champagne and just the quality of that diamond was so stunning.
Yeah, I don't, sometimes I think people kind of turn their nose up at the chocolate diamond kind of thing. Kristen Bell has a very Art Deco 3 carat emerald brown diamond that I think is just beautiful. I think it's all about just personalization. Color is a huge way to channel kind of how you feel. In my podcast episode, Diamond Shapes 101, I dive a lot into even just the shapes, how they can make you feel. That an oval is considered like friendly completeness, that a radiant has, it's 8 sharp little clipped corners. It's here to do business. And then there's the softness of the pear, which has a round bottom, but then a party hat on top. And color, I think, goes side by side with that, blue, loyalty, strength. Green, is it a coincidence that we're seeing Ben and JLo get engaged as spring is coming? Would he have proposed with a green diamond in, say, October, or would it have been orange? I don't know. Maybe they were just feeling the flowers.
Very cool. We have a good story on JLo's ring on our site that just posted today. I think we got some great experts to talk about their take on the cost of the ring, the kind of shade of green it is.
Yes, I saw that email. It was very split. People truly, I saw some estimates of people saying it cost, $1 million a carat. It's an 8.5 carat ring. So there you go. And some people saying it was less and some people saying it was a lot more. So if the jewelers are worried about getting sued for sending a picture, we might not get any more details about it.
Yes, well, I know. We'll see what confirmations ever come.
I don't know.
But the main thing is just don't look on people.com and all of the big celebrity websites, because they were reporting that she had a silver engagement ring. And, for anyone who knows their jewelry and J-Lo, that's just a glaring error right there.
That thing is set in platinum, the strongest platinum they could find.
Yes. Thank you so much for all of your thoughts on these topics, Jen. And can you tell us where we can find you in the podcast?
Oh, sure. The podcast is distributed to all listening platforms. So if you want to listen on Spotify, Apple, all the little different podcast apps, I pay for mass distribution. So if you go somewhere to listen to your podcast and you can't find me, send me a message on Instagram at Tea Gemstones podcast, so I can go and hassle my distributor and make sure that it is there for you to listen to. So it's on all listening platforms. We're on Instagram. We also have a Patreon, Tea Gemstones podcast, where you can get bonus episodes, exclusive merchandise, blog posts, behind the scenes, all that stuff.
Okay, and that's Tea and Gemstones, like tea as in the drink. And then, I'm sorry, I just lost my question. Oh yeah, and then you just launched the Patreon, I saw, and the new episodes of the podcast are out every other week, I believe.
Yes, they come out every other Tuesday, and there's actually a new one out today where I tackle the hotly contested topic of watches. Are they jewelry or not? Are they, Ashley?
I think it depends, which is not really, that's a little bit middle of the fence answer. My opinion, no, that's just me. But I'm going to listen to your podcast and kind of get the scoop.
I have almost never encountered a question that made people get their hackles up more than this one. People have capital O opinions about watches being jewelry or not. So I really enjoyed presenting both sides of the argument, but I actually found a 100% resolution to that answer, and it came in a really unexpected place. And I say that right at the end of the episode, where I let you know for sure, are they jewelry or not?
Okay, I cannot wait to find out. Well, thank you so much, Jen, and I will hand it back to Michelle.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley and Jennifer. That was a great discussion. And let's hope we didn't alienate too many watch listeners with that answer, Ashley. So just as a reminder to all our listeners today, you still have time to drop questions into the Zoom Q&A. We had some questions that came in beforehand, but I'm going to give people a few minutes to enter the questions now while I share a word from our sponsor, The Edge. More than software, The Edge is a total retail solution for jewelry store management. They offer the integrated tools you need to improve profits, customer relationships, and overall business. Learn more at theedgeforjewelers.com. That is theedgeforjewelers.com. Now, let's get started with our listener questions. So we had a lot of good questions that came in beforehand. One that I liked was, Jennifer, are there historic jewelry styles with pearls that are coming back into fashion today?
I think pearls are coming down the trend turnpike, river flow. I've lost track of the metaphors and analogies that I've used, but I think with a rising tide that lifts all boats, all vintage things are coming back into vogue. And while I don't think pearls are experiencing their moment in the sun right now, they're coming.
Okay. And because we had a big discussion here today about signet rings, I want to talk a little bit about this. Someone said, it seems like the British men always wore a signet ring in lieu of a wedding ring. Why? And I don't even know if that's true. I've not heard that before.
It is true.
First, is that true? And then why?
It is true. Prince Charles is the most high profile example of that. Both with Princess Diana and his wife Camilla, he wears a signet ring in lieu of a wedding ring. It's actually not traditional for the upper crust society of Britain to wear a wedding ring. Prince William actually doesn't wear a wedding ring. Look it up. He doesn't. Prince Harry actually bucked the trend big time by wearing a straight classic wedding band when he married Meghan Markle. The British people were very,
yeah. But that obviously could be because he married an American woman and now lives in the United States. So perhaps he had outside influences on his decision to wear a wedding band.
Sure, definitely. And the beautiful thing is, you think that men don't have a lot of choices for variation in their jewelry. So kudos to Harry for exercising his freedom to make a choice. So, if you just look at this one little micro example of a family, Prince Charles wears a signet ring, Prince William wears no ring, and Harry wears a band. I'm not exactly versed in the history of exactly why men would wear a signet ring in lieu of a wedding band. The little bit of a feminist in me kind of gets a rile up where I think, well, why is a man wearing a symbol of authority as an example of his marriage? What does that mean? But that could be completely inaccurate. It is an interesting thing to look at, the way that men mark their marital status in different cultures. That is a very interesting factor. It kind of reinforces signet rings being a traditionally masculine piece of jewelry, that this is just another way that men used signet rings, but now in modern times, men and women alike are claiming signet rings to mean whatever they want.
Yeah, maybe too, it became, once the man was married and became head of his household, perhaps he got his own crest or his own symbol, and then he marked that with the signet ring. Perhaps he got something that was different from what his family had when he became head of his own household. I don't know. I'm just guessing here. This is really interesting. I didn't know this. So if anybody knows the answer to this, feel free to drop it in the chat. That's the first I've heard of that. But very interesting.
I can do some more research on it. And in a couple of weeks, I'll try to post an update on some more research on signet rings on my Patreon. So if you're curious with more questions, I can go there and I'll answer them for you.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. I will look out for that.
I'll do it. I'll make a note.
Somebody wanted to know your forecast for jewelry trends for the rest of this year and into 2023.
Someone going to make bets? I think green is going to continue to move forward to take its place in the spotlight, pushing cornflower blue sapphires and icy white diamonds out of the way to just fully stand there and say, I am green, look at me. People are going to be influenced by that. I think it's Gatorade green, but that bright spring green ring of JLo, people are going to be influenced by that. It's going to trickle down that, then all the jewelers are going to start offering more green stones and things. I think we're going to continue to see vintage and personalization come more into vogue. Initial pendants and jewelry kind of had a big moment in 2020, 2021. That's kind of cresting away. I think we might see a resurgence, with all things JLo, that we might see some return of like nameplate necklaces, door knocker earrings that have your name in it, that just more ways to express yourself. We're a little bit overdue for a resurgence of birthstone jewelry that kind of rides in every couple years or so, where people start rocking garnets and aquamarines and peridots and different things to represent their birthstones. The zodiac actually has its own set of gemstones that aligns to the zodiac, which is something I'm really interested in. That you have a specific gemstone. If you're a Gemini, you have a pearl or an alexandrite gemstone, but you actually have your own gemstone for being a Gemini, a Sagittarius, a Capricorn, things like that. So I think people are going to start looking for the ends of the bell curve for how to identify with themselves and how to represent that in jewelry.
I think that'll be kind of
all regarding the zodiac.
Didn't know that.
I can tell you, people in November, I'm a Sagittarius, but we will take anything we can get that is not a topaz. So I think alternatives are a great idea.
Yes, I think that's going to be a big trend that's coming up. And I've started to see some jewelry shops feature some things and making that connection of, here's a vintage gemstone ring. If you're a Cancer, this is your stone. And people are messaging like, it is, I want it. So
Yeah, I think Zodiac, Ashley, you've written about this recently. Zodiac jewelry in general is like having a moment right now. We're seeing so many great Zodiac collections come out, including with not just your traditional like icon of each Zodiac symbol, but the constellation for that icon. And that's interesting. I didn't know that there were also signs for each zodiac, also gemstones for each Zodiac sign. Do you know what Virgo is by any chance? Just asking for a friend.
no, I don't know the ones for any sign. Isn't that terrible of me? I brought up this entire topic and then I have empty hands to give you the information, but I can promise you I'm researching it. It's in my queue.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
it's
really
perfect.
interesting.
It's like the little teaser that gets us all Googling. It's perfect.
Yeah, teasing myself, sitting here going, I don't know.
I also think color in general, I would just add to that when you're talking about different colors and green and just the way that we've seen enamel kind of continue the last few years. I think just an embrace of color in all jewelry will continue throughout this year and into next year. And then especially with, diamonds, colorless, aka white diamonds, being really expensive right now and in demand, color kind of gets its moment to shine.
Yeah, and I also want to piggyback on the green. I love green, and I find myself, I don't know why, I don't know if it's just because it's what's out there, but looking a lot more in green clothes than I have recently than I have in the past, or at least in the last couple of years. And I also love a green stone. I love an emerald, and you brought up sabrite garnets, and those are gorgeous as well. And someone in the comments also said they love a green stone, and I just think they're just gorgeous. And I think you're right. This green diamond of J-Lo, like everybody obviously isn't going to get a green diamond, and regardless of what you think of her particular shade, I think it's just going to ignite an interest in green across the board. I'm also an August baby, so I also have always loved my peridot.
There you go.
So we're going to round out today with a great question somebody wrote in beforehand. Somebody wants to know, what is one controversial jewelry opinion you have? And Ashley, if you want to weigh in this too, I'd love to hear it. I think this is a really interesting question, because I think it's so interesting to how passionate people are about jewelry, that you said, you did this episode about watches is watch jewelry. And like you said, people have capital O opinions about it. And it's just, people are just passionate about jewelry, and that's great. But, what do you think is one, Jennifer, controversial jewelry opinion you have?
Well, I believe in this so strongly that I would venture to say that this is not an opinion. This is just a fact, that opals do not belong in rings. They don't. They're too fragile. They have no business being in a bracelet. They have no business being in a ring. The color play that comes from an opal, they're layers and layers of silica with water trapped inside. They react to everything. They react to sweat, to changes in the air. If you sit out by a campfire, the smoke will get into your opal. It's recommended that you not wash your hands wearing an opal. They can't be exposed to any chemical. They can't be exposed to hairspray. They lose their color and they dull. It is, every time I see these vintage opal rings online, I think it is just a marvel of science and luck that stone has not faded into a beige colored rock pebble by this point. And I think people buy opals and they don't know how to take care of them. And I just think that for the good of all people, every opal should be taken from a ring and put into a necklace. And that's it. I'm logging off now. No one can tell me otherwise.
That actually explains a lot about a certain necklace I have, which is they're not amazing quality opals, but like a beaded strand of opals that actually does explain a lot about the quality of those stones now, after wearing them like through a summer, just never taking them off.
Oh no, they're amazing, beautiful stones.
Yeah.
They are so fragile and so delicate. I always equate that like taking care of an opal is like the equivalent of like holding a butterfly in your hand and trying to walk around all day being like, because there's just no way you can live your everyday life and not beat that opal to heck.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Jennifer, part of the thing is too, I bet a lot of people don't know that. And they're cleaning with their opal rings or washing their hands with their opal rings and everything else. Or like even cleaning your opal ring, like in jewelry cleaner, if it's the wrong kind of jewelry cleaner, you're going to ruin it. I mean, it'll say on the bottle if it's opal safe or not, but not everyone knows all this.
Oh, for goodness sakes, if you put an opal into too direct sunlight, it will start to fade. So if you're a mom and you treat yourself to a beautiful vintage opal ring, and then you go to your son's little league doubleheader and you sit outside in the sun for 4 hours, your opal is going to suffer. I mean, goodness sakes, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for that. Ashley, do you have a controversial jewelry opinion? No pressure if you don't. I just thought it was an
I
interesting.
mean, off the top of my head, not so much, except that I do think birthstones could use like a little revamp. That's just my personal opinion. I think I
Because you
mean,
hate topaz.
yes, and I hate citrine. Machine Gun Kelly, I mean, what
With Machine
better
Gun Kelly.
months to use as inspiration for a two-stone ring when he's born in April and his wife is born in May. I mean, it's just too easy. And then some of us over here with our citrine and topaz, I just think that any other ways that we can connect with certain stones outside of birthstones, the traditional ones as they are now, is cool, because I do still like the personalization aspect and thinking that this one is for you because of XYZ, but I just think getting a little more creative, doing some other things or other systems for choosing the stone have a lot of possibility.
I think there's some interesting psychology to that there, that I feel like you need the framework in place of someone giving you permission to claim that stone as your own. What's to stop you from just being like, aquamarine, that's mine. Wasn't born in March, don't care.
True, but there's something fun about finding which is yours. That's what I think
Yes.
it is. It's fun, just like astrology. So I think just the idea that there could be a stone per each zodiac sign, I think is brilliant.
I hope you like it.
She's just on the hunt for something other than a topaz. That's what this whole conversation boils down to. I'm an August baby, like I said earlier, and I love peridot, which also might be a controversial opinion. I know that's not a super popular stone, but we actually recently, meaning in the last like 10 years, they added spinel to the birthstone list for August. And spinel is wonderful, and you could find gray spinel. You can find red spinel, black spinel. It's an awesome stone. I mean, spinel in any color. So I'm pretty happy with my birthstone, but I could see Ashley's point.
Peridot is very unique. It is one of the only gemstones that comes in a singular shade. For better or for worse, it comes in that green. And there's something kind of comforting about the reliability of that. There's very little variance in it.
Yeah, I love my peridot. And I guess a lot of people didn't, and that's why I added spinel for August. But all right, we're gonna leave it there then. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Ashley, thank you so much for hosting. And thanks again to our sponsor, The Edge. My next question is going to be back next week. I'm going to drop the link to register for that into the chat. It's in there now. Associate Editor Lenore Fido will be interviewing Jewelers America President and CEO David Bonaparte, and Tiffany Stevens, the CEO, President, and General Counsel of the Jewelers Vigilance Committee, about what jewelers can and should do regarding goods from Russia. And that's going to be very interesting and topical discussion. I just dropped the link to register in the chat, so please join us next week if you can. And thanks again to our guests for joining us today, and please take care. Be safe out there, everyone. Bye-bye.